the Sarus crane with a small chick next to it. The chick is 1 day old. The Sarus crane is the tallest flying bird in the entire world. It's over 5 feet tall. Next one. So I'll tell you about a few places where you can go on a Sunday morning to do some bird watching. In Noida, there's a Yamuna River, and they have something called the Okhla Bird Park, which is right next to Kalandi Kunj. It's gated, so you can park and you can take a ticket and go inside. And the winter months are really, really good for this place to go bird watching. The river, you'll find about 35,000 waterfowl, different species of ducks in the river. So, yeah, thank you, ma'am. Next. This is the Yamuna Biodiversity Park. This has been recreated as a part of the Yamuna near the Delhi University by scientists. What they did was an experiment to see if they could recreate the entire ecosystem of the Yamuna in controlled environments, and they were very successful. That's the Lodi Garden. Like I said, any green place with lots of trees and greenery, a little bit water, will surely attract a lot of birds. Besides, you'll see the fantastic monuments there too, and it's a great place to spend the morning. It's nice, it's safe, and it's very, very green. A lot of birds there. So again, I really recommend the children to go out on Sunday morning exploring the parks around their house. Even the terraces, their own gardens, they'll find a lot of birds. Next, ma'am. This is the Asola Bhatti Wildlife Sanctuary. In fact, it's the only wildlife sanctuary we have in the Delhi region. And this is part of the Aravalis. And in fact, the Aravalis is the oldest fold mountains in India, which extend from Delhi through Haryana to Rajasthan. And the Aravali has a very typical dry scrub habitat with a lot of acacia and a lot of scrub. So you'll find a lot of dry scrub species. A lot of species are dependent on certain habitats. Like in this kind of habitat, we'll find sandgrouse, Indian gosa, a lot of raptors, which are birds of prey, like big eagles and all. So again, every habitat has its own different set of species. Next one. Najafgarh Jheel, it's near Dwarka. It's actually a drainage outflow, but it's thriving with birds. Next one. This is the Sultanpur Bird Sanctuary in Gurgaon. This, in fact, one of our late prime ministers, Indira Gandhi, she was very instrumental in making this a sanctuary in 1972. So she, along with a naturalist at that time, Peter Jackson, he took her there to show her what this place is capable of. And this was declared a sanctuary in 1972. And this was basically a low-lying catchment area of the rainwater. That's how it became nice habitat for birds. But over the years, all around it, the human has built houses and farmhouses and walls. As a result, all the water there isn't being coming by the rains anymore. So now they put pipelines there, which bring water from the canal number 5. This is Deagle village, again on the outskirts of Haryana. It's about half an hour drive from Gurgaon. Basically, every village that we have in our city, around the city, will have a little water body of its own. Every village. If you drive from Delhi to Jaipur or drive from Delhi to Agra, on the way you find a lot of small villages, and they all have their own water body, which are very, very important source of water for them. And they're also a very important source for the birds. Next one. This is the Mangal Bunny Forest. Again, this is in the Delhi Gurgaon road, and this is called a sacred forest. In fact, this is the last native forest left in the Delhi NCR, which is really, really prime forest. And this is called the sacred forest, where the people believe that the whole forest is guarded by a deity, and if you cut a tree or a branch there, you will be cursed. So as a result, nobody cuts trees here. So we actually need a lot of these kind of forests in a country today to save a country. But this is really a nice forest on the Delhi outskirts and called the sacred forest. It's called the Mangal Bunny Forest. Next one. So I'll show you about some birds which you will see in your gardens, and you'll all probably know these birds very well. This is a common myna. I'm sure you've all seen it in your gardens every day. We get four different species. We got three different species of myna in the Delhi area. One is this common myna, one is a bank myna, which is similar but has a grayish body. And the third is a pied myna, which is a black and white myna. Next one. Rose-ringed parakeet. You probably have it in your gardens every day. If you put out little water for them in summer, they'll come and drink water in your balcony too. We wrongly call this as a parrot, but it's not a parrot. It's actually a parakeet. The rose-ringed parakeet. Thank you, ma'am. Black kite. In Hindi, we call it cheel, and you'll see it all over your school compound also. In fact, this is a scavenger. If you are eating a sandwich in the break time in your lawn, it'll often come and grab it from your hand. So it's actually a scavenger, but it's black kite. Thank you, ma'am. The barbet, it's called the coppersmith barbet. Why called coppersmith? Because of the call. It sounds like a coppersmith is banging his tools on a hollow pipe. That's the call that the bird makes. And it's very, very vocal right now in your lawns right now because it's now time for nesting. So you will see it, you will hear it every morning and every evening around your gardens and on trees, but very hard to see because it's the same color as the trees, as the leaves. But you will hear it 100% in your gardens these days. Next one. The yellow-legged green pigeon. Again, this pigeon lives on treetops and hardly ever comes down to land except to drink water. And very common in all your gardens, wherever you're living, any tall trees, look up in the tall trees, it should be at the total on the tip of the tall trees. They're always there these days and they're residents. And they're again at this time breeding, so very, very active. In fact, all resident birds which are not migratory breed in this time now in in the Delhi area. Next one. A magpie robin. I'm sure you've all seen them in your gardens. It's a black and white bird. On the right is the male, and the gray and white on the left is the female, and very common in our gardens everywhere in Delhi. All gardens, small, big, everywhere. Thank you. This is a shikra. It's a bird of prey. It's a resident Delhi species, so you'll find it throughout the year. It's a little bigger than a pigeon, and it hunts birds. It hunts other birds. It hunts mice. It hunts lizards, and it's called accipiter. It's a shikra. Thank you, man. The black drongo, again, very, very common in all your homes today. It's also called in Hindi the kotwal because it's a very aggressive bird, and it wherever this bird will nest, a lot of other birds like the golden oriole and the bulbul will all nest in the same tree because this bird will ward off all enemies very, very aggressively. That's why it's called kotwal in Hindi. It's called the black drongo. Thank you, man. The Indian peafowl, which none of you need any introduction to, our national bird. This is called the red wattle lapwing. Again, you'll hear it calls every morning and every evening. It calls very, very aggressively in any fallow field around your houses. It will be nesting these days. And if you go near the nest or you walk past, it'll come and it'll come and like bomb you in flight to ward you off the nest. And it's very, very vocal. It's called the red wattle lapwing. In Hindi, we also call it the titeri. Yes, ma'am. So some other birds in Delhi, which are a little rarer, but you should keep a lookout for them, and they are really, really pretty birds. First is the greater flamingo. It sounds a little surprisingly that the flamingo is found in Delhi, but yes, it is. We do have flamingos in Delhi, and we do have them very, very near your school. In fact, in the Okhla Bird Sanctuary, they are pretty much resident there around the year. And if you go inside the sanctuary in Okhla, you will find flamingos in about flocks of 100 to 200 birds are there. They nest on the salt pans in Gujarat, in the Rann of Kutch, and they will not nest till they're about 4 years of age. So the birds found in Delhi are mostly juveniles and some semi-adults, and they will stay here till they nest in the summer, in the rains, in the Rann of Kutch, and then again come back to Delhi. The greater flamingo. really pretty bird, tall bird. You must go see it in the Okhla Bird Park. The great white pelican. Again, it loves to eat fish, and they're actually a resident population in the Delhi Zoo. Besides that, we'll find them in all water bodies on the Yamuna, in Sultanpur, in Deagle. It's called the great white pelican, also the rosy pelican, because it has a rosy watch to its breast. So the old name was called rosy pelican. Thank you, ma'am. The peregrine falcon. This is the fastest flying bird in the world. It comes to Delhi in the winter months. When it dives from a height to catch its prey, it gets a speed of 300 kilometers an hour. And with the impact of its speed, it kills the bird. You'll find them in all tall buildings, be it DLF, Jasola, or in the Okhla Bird Park, on the tall pylons. It sits on tall perches and looks around for its food to eat, and it's really fast. It's called the peregrine falcon. It comes to India about northern India about September, October, and stays here till March, February, March, when it goes back to Central Asia to breed there. It breeds there, it raises babies there, and then come back again here in September, October. Yes, ma'am. The northern pintail, this is a duck. Again, flies over the Himalayas to reach us, comes from central Siberia, flies over all the mountains, goes over Ladakh, the Himalayas, and comes down to the Delhi area. And it spends the entire summer feeding and getting its fat reserves here. It actually needs a lot of fat to make the journey back home in winter. So it just feeds and feeds and sleeps here in the Delhi wetlands, and then flies back again in September, October to central Siberia to breed there, raises babies. And once it raises babies, it flies back without the babies. The babies will follow a month or something later, and they're all guided by the Earth's magnetic inbuilt inside them. So they come back and to the same water bodies where the parents are. Yes, ma'am. So that was just a little bit about birds, so which you can all see in your gardens and around Delhi. So we also have a little club for children called the Can Club, Cuckoo About Nature Club, and you should all join the club and come on Sunday morning. It's a free club, and we just kids meet on Sunday morning, go on a walk, on a little bird walk, on a little nature walk, on a little tree walk around the Delhi area, and that's it. Thank you so much for having me here, ma'am.
Thank you so much for the presentation, sir. It was quite interesting and knowledge imparting. I am very sure all our children learned about so many species and so many unique traits that you shared about them. Thank you once again for enlightening us. Sir, I have some questions for you.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
you have been birding for over 2 decades. What changes have you noticed over the years? I mean, have the number of birds reduced or their habitats destroyed over the years?
Ma'am, destroyed, yes, because basically the biggest enemy to birds is man and his greed for urbanization. So like now you notice a lot of papers do carry stories about how sparrows are being lost in a city. You don't see sparrows anymore. When we were younger, we could see sparrows in the balconies everywhere. Now sparrows are not so common, simply because now the way we make our houses these days is different. Like now, a facade is all steel and glass. Earlier, the houses used to have these ledges and chhajjas and little crevices and holes in the buildings where sparrows would nest. And now they're all gone. Now it's all steel, glass. So the minute you leave the Delhi area and some little village around Delhi, you find plenty of sparrows. So they like this. We are the main culprit for birds getting less.
Them away.
Agreed for urbanization. We're destroying wetlands. We're destroying trees. We're cutting trees to make roads. So a lot of things.
So in that case, Mr. Nikhil, what is the solution to bring back the sparrows?
Plant more trees. Keep your surroundings green. Put some water out for birds. Water is important in summer, at least in summer months, because water is scarce in the Delhi area. But most importantly, keep your surroundings clean, green, and don't go on cutting trees and chopping bushes off. Like sparrows would love to flock in bushes of bougainvillea. But now you see all our lawns have become so clean and manicured. There are no bushes left anymore. There's no wild spaces left for birds to nest and to roost anymore. Yes, ma'am.
Sir, also I'm curious, you just made us see your book, some glimpses from your book, Birds
Yes, ma'am.
Delhi. So, sir, why did you choose to write that book? What inspired you, sir?
Okay, so I wouldn't really define myself as a generalist author. I'm passionate about birds, and I wanted to share some of my excitement that I get from seeing these creatures. I have been bird watching for 25 years, and I've traveled the length and breadth of India, as well as a lot of hotspots across the world. I wanted to put some of the knowledge and experiences I had gathered in an effort to get people more keen in the rich diversity of bird life that is perching outside their windows. So when I started birding, there were not many guidebooks in India, except, of course, the Salim Ali books. As for Delhi, there was one book by Usha Ganguly, published in 1975. Really great book, but there was a huge gap between 75 and today. So I wanted a book that would be a ready reference in the field. So basically, just so people can keep it in the hand and go out for a walk and identify a bird. And so my book basically has pointers and easy pointers as to what to look for in certain species. Also, did you know that Delhi has the second largest number of species found in any capital city in the world?
That's
The first,
quite interesting,
the first is Nairobi,
sir. Okay.
and the second capital city in the world with the largest number of species is Delhi. We have 520 species that have been recorded in the Delhi area.
We are definitely learning so much from you, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, also, I have a student with me who wants to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Adyasha, over to you, dear.
Good morning, sir. Myself, Adyasha Pradhan, and I study in class 8. My
morning.
question to you is that the nature series that came out last year talks about 100 of each species of garden flowers, bugs, birds, trees, and insects. How did that idea come about? Is writing a nature book tough?
See, while you don't necessarily need a PhD to do a book, you must have a passion and a love to do something different. So as your passion grows, you go deeper into the subject. You may read up on past records, observe shifting trends and numbers to enhance your knowledge. So also for this book, if you notice, if you go the book, I have actually chosen some children as co-authors. So, like the bird book has two children bird authors with me, Aman Sharma and Maitreya. They were both in class 9 and 10. So I encourage children to do this with me, and they did all the research. They found out all different things. So basically, the whole idea was to get children involved and to get a book out from a children's perspective. So all 5 books are actually for children, and they are very easy. They have pointers, they have fun facts, they have things in the where you should learn about the birds. Not just birds. There are 5 books of birds, mammals, insects, trees, and flowers. It's called the Big Little Nature Books from BK. So yes, that was the idea. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
So I hope, Adyasha, that cleared your doubt. I hope it enlightened you as well, and I hope
Yes, ma'am.
it inspired you to write a book yourself.
Yes, ma'am. I'll surely try it out.
Definitely, dear. And thank you so much, sir. It was really wonderful. Just one thing on on this World Environment Day, what message do you have for us, for all our kids, for us, about birding and conservation of our environment?
See, birds are everywhere. So, which other creature can be seen and heard outside your very homes? Birds are in our forests, in our wetlands, cities, basically in all natural and man-made environments, we can see birds. We observe them in our gardens, in our backyards, in our balconies, terraces. So, and in fact, even more now in lockdown, if you notice in lockdown, you probably heard a lot of bird calls, bird sound, because there were no people out really, taking any disturbance. So there's a lot of bird calls these days in the last 2 months in lockdown. And an interest in birding or any creative hobby comes from observation. That may trigger a need to know more about your interests. And once you start observing birds, their habits, their habitats, diets, a whole new wondrous world opens up for you. My message to everyone would be that you have to try something to know whether you like it or not. So go out there and let the magic unfold. Go do some birding, make a little blog, make a little notebook, take some notes, and see how you like it. I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your knowledge and giving us your precious time. We are really grateful to you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Really
Thank you so much.
Sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Students, unfortunately, Nikhil sir has some commitments that he has to get back to, so we won't take much of his time and bid him farewell. It was a pleasure listening to you, sir. On behalf of my school, Bal Bharti Public School, Noida, I give a heartfelt vote of thanks to our guest, Mr. Nikhil Devasar, who spent his busiest time gracing the occasion. Today, we had the opportunity to witness your discoveries, and they were truly commendable, sir. Thank you once again, sir.
Thank you, ma'am, for having me. And to all the children, have a great birding week ahead. And make a little note in your notebook and send notes to your ma'am about what birds you see in the next 1 week in your gardens, in your terraces, in your balconies. Thank you, ma'am. Bye.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, sir. Yes?
Ma'am, I want to ask something from Nikhil sir.
Sorry.
Nikhil sir, are you here? I think sir has left, so you can just send your queries to us and we will try our best to clarify them, right?
Is that okay, Om?
Is that okay, Om?
Thank you.
That is great.
Thank you for
It is lovely to see our children participating, being so active. And that was truly wonderful, wasn't it? Isn't it amazing how our world is a home to so many beautiful plants, animals, birds, and other creatures? Well, I think our environment is truly a gift and a blessing for us all. And that is why maintaining a balance in nature is very, very important. Taking it further now, I'd invite over Ms. Anuja Vartak to share her thoughts and insights on this. Over to you, ma'am. Anuja, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So I'm Anuja. And today I'll be discussing not just about what we can do to care for the environment, but I'll also talk about some corrective actions that we need to take to safeguard our environment. Could you please share the screen so that...
Yes, ma'am, sure.
Yeah.
Ma'am? I hope it's visible, ma'am. Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
So when I was around 10 years old, I first heard the term climate change in my environment awareness lecture. I did not think it was real because I couldn't see it happening in front of my eyes. If there was really a crisis, you would at least see some signs, because back then, we rarely even observed cyclones or untimely rains for that matter, like we do right now. In my teenage, I remember my favorite pastime would be spotting the different insects and birds in my backyard. But as years passed by, I specifically remember the fireflies that I'd see almost every night began to disappear. Next slide, please. I'm not quite sure if you can identify these fireflies. I mean, these insects are known as fireflies. So I would see them every day almost when I was a kid, but right now we hardly ever get to see them. I desperately well, signs like these were good enough for me to worry, if not about big terms like climate change, at least about our surrounding environment. So I was on the lookout for something that I could do at an individual level to protect the environment. And at first, the first thing that popped up was participating in tree plantation drives. But as obvious as it sounds, I felt extremely proud of contributing to protecting the environment. But little did I know that I might be causing more harm than good, because half knowledge is more dangerous than no knowledge and greenery isn't necessarily gold. Next slide. Yes. So I distinctly remember one of my biology teachers telling me how important it was to know the right kind of plants to plant in a given habitat, because some plants may not be suitable for some habitats. What would happen if you plant rainforest trees in deserts? She asked. They would die, right? But moreover, there are some plants that can not just grow in difficult conditions, but can snatch the mere existence of plants which are already thriving well in those areas. And that not only impacts the local plant species, it also adversely impacts the populations of birds, butterflies, and all the other visitors who depend on those plants for their survival. It was then that I first learned about the difference between planting native and exotic species. The previous slide that you can see are those native species. Yes. So exotic species like jacaranda and bougainvillea are maybe bright colored, and you may want to plant them in your gardens. However, they don't originally belong to our country. So Indian insects, birds, and bats need not prefer those trees, but actually prefer native flowers and fruits like the ones that you see, and they belong to our country, because native flowers and always produce more nectar, and local seasonal fruits and leaves always produce provide them with more nutrition. Additionally, exotic species are maybe at times super resilient and could in fact even turn invasive, and they are capable of destroying local communities too. This not only applies to plants, but also to animals ranging from fish to mammals. And anyway, when something isn't supposed to be there, it can come back at us like boomerangs. I'll give you another example of wrong kind of greenery, which resulted in massive destruction last year. Next slide, please. So for example, do you remember last year's locust attack? Would you have ever imagined that a standalone grasshopper species could turn this crazy and be invasive? So it is because of the cyclone-driven untimely rains and sudden greenery in deserts that formed locusts. Next slide, please. What you see here in the picture is actually a single grasshopper that has turned into a group of locusts. So now you might wonder that greenery would be great, but it is also important to understand that when a period of drought is followed by rapid vegetation growth, that kind of greenery isn't really a good sign. In such times, certain chemicals may be triggered in the bodies of these solitary grasshoppers, and then they start breeding abundantly, become gregarious, and migrate in groups, and that's when we call them as locusts. These locusts are very well capable of destroying crops. But who is to be blamed? We humans and our actions, right? Our irresponsible actions are hampering the environment. Could you take the slide, please? I tell you, nature has the power to not only take care of itself, but also to protect us from disasters. Because, for instance, the mangrove trees that you see in this picture belong to coastal regions and have strength to break the force of even huge, powerful, massive cyclones. And then, when we cut down those trees to build flyovers, aren't we being ignorant and foolish? But then you may think that these things are not really in control of students. And you're right. Then what can students like do to be careful and helpful? Next slide, please. So when I say correct actions, it also implies simple actions like avoiding the use of plastic. Like someone from your batch actually recited the poem. Although it is impossible to completely abandon plastic products, At least in the near future, let us at least try to avoid one-time use of plastic products. Let us intentionally remember to carry cloth bags to supermarkets instead of asking for those poor quality plastic bags, which are anyway going to tear after a single use, right? While shopping, you can always opt for seasonal and local fruits and vegetables or fish because harvesting them does not require extra nurturing, special maintenance of temperature, or extra irrigated water. In fact, you could also save water in your own houses. If you collect the wastewater that drains from water purifiers to water your own plants or to clean your house without doing a lot of effort, you save up on so much of water on a daily basis. And that isn't rocket science. In fact, this idea was given to me by my nephew who studies in 9th grade and cares for the planet like you and I do. Next, please. And hopefully soon, when the pandemic dies down and we go out to celebrate at a restaurant, the least each one of us could do is simply carry metal straws in our bags instead of asking for those plastic ones, and then wash them after the use. And there's more that we could do on a daily basis. You could always save on the tap water by turning the tap switches, or you could turn off the fans and lights after you leave the room. And those kind of measures you already know, and I'm pretty sure you must be following. So today, on the occasion of World Environment Day, let us not only pledge to protect the environment with good intent, but also be aware of our actions, because protecting the environment is not only about big actions, it is also about knowing the implications of our actions. Next, please. I sometimes myself struggle with what's right and what's wrong for the environment. But then we must ask ourselves questions like, are items made of wood really good to use just because they are natural? Aren't we cutting down those trees? Or should we find durable materials better? Are they better? And because they are reusable and sustainable? The answers aren't always simple, but neither are problems like climate change, environment degradation, and species extinction. Well, wish you a happy World Environment Day. Next, please. If students like you are interested in knowing about nature and some amazing animal behaviors that are observed in various animal species, make sure to follow our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube handles. And thank you so much for inviting me here.
That was amazing, ma'am. You told us so much, and I'm sure, just like me, our students also learn so much from your knowledge. We are totally in awe. I have a question for you, ma'am. If you can enlighten us some more, may I?
Sure, please do.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, do you feel like all organisms, no matter how big or small, are actually linked and they have an important role to play to protect the balance in our environment?
Of course, I mean, from a tiger to a microbe, every organism has a role to play. A tiger, being the apex predator, keeps the prey populations in check. Imagine if you saw a herd of deer and it had no predators at all. The populations would explode just like our human populations are exploding. And the smallest of organisms, like microbes, have an equally important role to play. They are responsible for removing the toxic chemicals for the environment, or some microbes even degrade dead animals or leaves. So, of course, all organisms, right from frogs to lions, everyone are important.
Thank you so much, ma'am. You really, helped me understand it better. Also, ma'am, our students, I have some students here who have some questions for you. We have Kshitij Sharma of class 10. Kshitij, you can ask your question.
Good morning, ma'am. Ma'am, my question to you is that what are the environmental career aspects for the coming generation?
So So the obvious ones would perhaps be the research or environmental engineering. But if you're also interested in law, environmental law is today a great option. You could also be involved in framing policies, or also become an environment consultant and guide architects in landscaping and beautifying places. These days, environmental journalism is also another option. And by the time you students graduate or pass out from your 12th, I'm pretty sure that there will be so many other options that are not even known as of now. So honestly, we humans have done so much damage that without careers like these, there is no option, and we need to save our planet. So we have to have the careers like these. So yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Kshitij, I hope your queries were answered. Ma'am, we have another question from Janvi Tandon on class 10. Go ahead, Janvi, you can ask your question.
Yes. Good morning, ma'am. My question to you is that so much of waste, so much of pandemic waste like masks, gloves, and PPE kits are being generated. So how can this solid waste is to be taken care of?
So honestly speaking, this pandemic was so sudden that none of us were prepared. Even the developed nations were not prepared to handle so much of solid waste. And I read somewhere that in India, before the pandemic, around 500 grams per hospital bed was generated, the solid waste. But today, during the pandemic, around 1.5 kgs of solid waste is being generated per hospital bed, and it is getting out of control. There aren't definite solutions as of now, but at an individual level, we could participate in solid waste management drives that are being carried out by several NGOs. We could also think of how sustainable a product is and then purchase it, and probably use cloth masks rather than the other surgical masks that aren't really required on a daily basis unless you are a COVID patient yourself. So thinking before actually purchasing anything would be the best solution on an individual level, I would say.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Well, that definitely gave us some clarity, didn't it? I believe that it did. And ma'am, we will truly do our part in managing waste and other things as well. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a pleasure indeed to listen to such inspiring stories. Well, this brings us to the culmination of this enriching discussion. We all had a great time. Knowing about nature and our world, I actually feel enthused and zesty to make a difference and be kind towards all living beings. What about you, children? Do you feel the same? Well, agreed. I think you feel the way I do. We all do. So let's culminate this session now. On behalf of the organizing team, I would like to extend a hearty vote of thanks to our honorable speakers, Mr. Nikhil Devasar and Ms. Anuja Vartak, for taking out their valuable time to share their thoughts and knowledge with us all. Now I request our wonderful spectators to wave their slogans and convey their regards to our guests. Students? Yes. So I hope, ma'am, you're able to see. Our children were very enthusiastic.
I was able to see also, I think, Anshum, who was displaying lovely posters. So throughout. Yes.
So it is lovely to see you all are so enthusiastic students. Thank you so much. That was indeed heartwarming. I also wish to express my deepest gratitude to our principal ma'am, vice principal ma'am, and headmistresses ma'am. A special thanks to our organizing team for making this event successful. And a big, big thanks to our colleagues, dear students, and parents for being patient listeners and active participants. Thank you, everyone. See you next time.